What do you see when you look in the mirror? Not the curated version others expect, not the filtered image shaped by social pressure or fleeting validation, but the raw, unfiltered truth staring back at you when no one else is around. In that reflection lives the only person who knows everything you've survived, everything you've feared, everything you're still fighting for. And that person is the only one who can save you. You don't need permission to rise. You don't need applause to evolve. Because when nothing works, when motivation fades, when plans collapse, when even silence feels heavy, the only answer that remains is this. You focus on yourself, and you do it for yourself. This is not a theory. This is not a motivational speech. This is a return to discipline, clarity, and the kind of mental strength that doesn't need to be seen to be real. Using timeless Stoic principles and modern insights grounded in self-discipline, inner reflection, and personal growth, this video is a quiet rebellion against noise and a powerful reminder that your energy, your choices, and your focus belong to you. If you're tired of comparison, distraction, or waiting for life to validate you, then you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe if you're ready to rebuild from the inside out. And in the comments, tell me what the mirror says to you, because your next chapter starts with a single look. And yes, the best part begins now. 1. Stop waiting for permission. You don't need anyone's approval to become the person you were meant to be. You don't need applause to take the first step. You don't need validation from family, friends, bosses, or strangers to start walking a path that feels right to your soul. Yet for some reason, many people wait. They wait for signs. They wait for others to understand. They wait for the perfect time, for clarity, for consensus. And in that waiting, they waste the most precious resource they have, time. Because the truth is simple. If you keep waiting for the world to agree with your decision, you'll spend your entire life standing still. The Stoics warned us about this illusion of external control. They taught us that the only things within our grasp are our own thoughts, choices, and actions. Everything else, opinions, timing, reactions from others, is outside our control. When you surrender your life to the approval of others, you lose your power to choose. You become a passenger in a vehicle meant for your hands. The moment you give someone else the authority to say yes or no to your growth, your healing, your transformation, you give away the steering wheel. And this happens quietly. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like hesitating to apply for a new role because someone said you weren't ready. Sometimes it looks like postponing a fitness journey because your friends mock discipline. Sometimes it looks like staying silent in a room where your voice could shift everything, just because you're afraid of being misunderstood. Waiting becomes a habit, a slow, paralyzing routine that disguises itself as caution. But underneath it is fear. Not just fear of failure, but fear of being seen doing something others don't yet understand. When you live like that, your growth becomes conditional. It depends on who's watching. It depends on who's clapping. It depends on whether you feel liked, accepted, or understood. And as long as your focus is out there, it can never be fully in here. That's why focusing on yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's clarity. It's taking ownership of your time, your decisions, and your energy. No one else can live this life for you, and no one else will carry the regret for the dreams you buried, waiting for someone to believe in them. You're not here to convince anyone. You're not here to explain every step before you take it. You're here to walk with integrity, in silence if necessary, and to let your actions speak louder than any announcement ever could. The world doesn't need another speech. It needs examples, quiet proof, steady growth. And that only comes when you stop outsourcing your courage to the opinions of people who don't walk in your shoes. There will be moments when your choices feel misunderstood. That's okay. You're not building a life for applause. You're building a core that doesn't shake when the crowd goes quiet. You're not waiting to feel ready. You're creating readiness by acting. Action is what forges confidence. Not talk, not plans, not likes. Action. Imagine what would happen if you stopped asking, "Can I?" and started declaring, "I will." How much time would you reclaim if you stopped seeking permission and started choosing progress? This shift doesn't require a massive change overnight. It begins in the smallest of moments, waking up early even when no one expects it, writing your goals even if no one reads them, and saying no to what doesn't align, even if it makes others uncomfortable. There is strength in the silent decision to begin, even if no one notices, even if no one agrees. Because you notice, and deep down, your inner voice always knows when you're stalling. The discomfort you feel when you're not moving forward isn't confusion. It's your conscience reminding you that you were meant for more. And that more doesn't begin when someone hands it to you. It begins when you stop waiting and start building. Stoicism doesn't teach us to rebel against the world. It teaches us to take back command of ourselves. It teaches us that the moment we stop letting our lives be dictated by moods, trends, and others' expectations is the moment we begin to experience true freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't require a stage. The kind that lives quietly inside, anchored by daily discipline and unwavering purpose. So stop asking for signs. Stop waiting for clarity that only comes after action. Stop handing over your power to people who weren't assigned your mission. Begin now. Begin with what you have. Begin with who you are. The mirror is watching, and so is your future. And neither of them is asking for permission. They're waiting for a decision. Make it, too. Show up for yourself daily. You don't rise by accident. You don't become disciplined by chance. Growth doesn't knock on your door one morning and hand you a new life. It begins the moment you decide to show up for yourself. Not once, not when it's convenient, not when the world applauds, but every single day. Especially when it's hard. Especially when no one is watching. I know because I've lived the opposite. 10 years ago, I didn't even know what it meant to think about myself. Not in a selfish way, but in a responsible one. Back then, I lived on autopilot. I said yes to everything except my own needs. I woke up exhausted, chased goals I didn't believe in, and numbed out at night with whatever noise helped me forget how lost I felt. The idea of putting myself first felt distant, like something reserved for people stronger, clearer, better. But the truth is, no one is born ready. No one hands you a routine. No one comes knocking to remind you to be accountable to yourself. You have to choose. You have to earn it. One decision, one habit, one quiet moment at a time. That's the Stoic way. You don't control the storms, but you can prepare your ship. You don't get to choose the circumstances, but you can choose how you show up in them. Discipline is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent when everything inside you wants to disappear. It's about making that first small decision in the morning. Not for the world, not for optics, but because you promised yourself you'd rise. No one can live this life for you. No one else is responsible for your mind, your energy, or your peace. This means every morning is a test, not against the world, but against your own excuses. The urge to delay, to avoid, to justify just this once is strong. But every time you follow through with what you said you'd do, even if it's just 10 minutes of clarity, 10 minutes of silence, 10 push-ups, or 10 pages, you build trust with yourself. And trust is the root of real self-worth. Not praise, not attention, not public success. Inner alignment. Showing up doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks boring, unnoticed, silent. But those are the moments that shape you. They are the bricks of your foundation, the unseen repetitions that forge mental toughness and emotional clarity. People chase results, but the results chase routine. Your presence, your actual engagement with yourself each day, is the process that forms an unshakable core. You don't have to do it all, but you have to do something. And you have to do it because you said you would. When you build that pattern, you become dependable, not to others, but to yourself. That's what changes your life. Not the external achievements, not the milestones, but the quiet, unbreakable integrity of someone who knows they'll show up even when it's hard, even when the mood is gone, even when the fire burns low. You become your own lighthouse. And that steadiness, it changes how you move, how you speak, how you think. You don't flinch when the world is loud. You don't collapse when things get heavy. Because inside you've already met pressure and you didn't run. The mind wants comfort, the body wants ease, but the spirit, the part of you that knows why you're here, wants growth. That's why each day you show up as an act of spiritual alignment. It's not just discipline, it's purpose. A declaration that you are worth the effort. that your peace is worth protecting, that your goals matter, not someday, but now. There will be days you don't feel like it. That's not a flaw, that's human. The key is to show up anyway, not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. Even a small action done with full presence holds power. It proves something to your subconscious. You're not waiting for motivation. You're building character. You're not performing, you're preparing. And with each repetition, you reinforce a truth stronger than emotion, that your life is in your hands and no one else's. Don't look for big changes overnight. Look for proof that you're becoming someone who keeps going, someone who rises when it's easier to hide, someone who builds silently, not for credit, but for clarity. Let each morning be a quiet vow. Let each action be a return to alignment. And when you fail, don't collapse. Restart, forgive, refocus, and show up again. Not for anyone else, for you. Because when you learn how to show up daily, you stop negotiating with weakness. You stop waiting for ideal conditions. You stop needing life to be perfect to make progress. And that shift, though invisible to others, changes everything. Not all at once, but inevitably. Consistency doesn't guarantee results tomorrow. It guarantees transformation over time. And that transformation is yours to earn, one choice at a time, one honest day at a time, one silent win at a time. 3. Your value isn't in their hands. Your value was never meant to be measured by applause. It doesn't increase when someone compliments you, and it doesn't disappear when they criticize you. The truth is, no one else's opinion has the power to define your worth unless you hand it to them. And when you do, you become a reflection of their judgment instead of the architect of your own identity. You shrink every time you wait for someone to validate what you already know deep down, that you are enough. This isn't about arrogance. It's about clarity. You are not better than anyone else, but you are also not beneath anyone. And the moment you start chasing praise like a currency, you make your self-worth a fragile thing, dependent, unstable, and easily taken away. A single insult, a missed promotion, or a cold shoulder becomes enough to shake your core because you've placed your identity in someone else's hands. The Stoics warned us, what belongs to others cannot belong to you. Their thoughts, their opinions, their reactions, none of it is within your control. And if your peace depends on those things, you've already lost it. This is why Stoic philosophy isn't just about detachment, it's about direction. Instead of looking outward to ask, am I enough? You look inward and affirm, I am aligned. Not with trends, not with approval, but with your own values, your own path, and your own integrity. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparison. We all do. You see someone praised, awarded, liked, followed, and part of you wonders, what about me? But what you rarely see is the hidden cost of living for external approval. It turns your life into a performance. You stop acting from purpose and start reacting for applause. You begin editing your actions to earn attention rather than expressing your truth. And slowly, you drift, away from your own voice, away from your own knowing, until one day, you're applauded for a version of yourself that doesn't even feel real. That's the danger. You get good at pleasing others and lose the skill of standing firm in silence. You get used to adjusting yourself like a mask, until one day, you forget what your real face looks like. This is where the Stoic path becomes vital, not as a philosophy to memorize, but as a compass to return to. You don't need to be celebrated to be centered. You don't need to be seen to be whole. The man who walks with integrity does not beg to be understood. He does not flinch when he's overlooked. He knows that self-respect is not a public sport, it's a private discipline. Your energy is too valuable to waste chasing echoes. Every moment you spend explaining yourself to those who don't care is a moment stolen from your own growth. And every time you seek permission to feel proud, you delay the peace that comes from simply being who you are. The most dangerous prison isn't built from stone. It's built from needing to be liked. So what do you do instead? You stop performing. You stop chasing. You stop outsourcing your sense of self. You get quiet. You get deliberate. You align with your core and choose actions that reflect your principles, not public demand. You listen to the voice inside that doesn't scream for approval but speaks with calm conviction. That voice doesn't flatter. It doesn't entertain. It simply tells the truth. And when you start listening to it, more than the world, you begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet authority. Real confidence is not loud, it's not desperate, it's not shaped by likes or followers or comments. It is steady, it is disciplined. It is the result of showing up for yourself daily, knowing your value, and refusing to sell it for temporary praise. When you know who you are, criticism becomes information, not identity. Praise becomes encouragement, not oxygen. And silence? Silence becomes peace, not punishment. You are not what they say you are. You are not what they fail to see. You are who you decide to become every day, through the thoughts you entertain, the actions you repeat, and the boundaries you honor. That power was never theirs. It has always been yours. You just forgot. You just gave it away, one compromise at a time. But now you can take it back, not with noise, not with rage, but with stillness, with presence, with clarity. Let them underestimate you. Let them misunderstand. Let them walk away. Their silence won't define you if your soul is anchored. Their dismissal won't wound you if your path is honest. You are not here to prove. You are here to live, fully, deeply, and without apology. And the moment you stop needing their recognition, you'll feel something stronger than applause. Peace. The kind that can't be bought, borrowed, or faked. The kind that only comes when you stop asking for permission to believe in yourself. For the mirror doesn't lie. You can perform for the world, wear a mask for your friends, put on strength for your family, but the mirror doesn't care. It doesn't applaud. It doesn't criticize, it simply reflects. And in that reflection, stripped of filters, noise, and roles, stands the only version of you that truly matters, the honest one. The one who knows exactly when you've been avoiding, hiding, and pretending. The one who hears the excuses, feels the distractions, and sees through the performance. And the question it silently asks each morning is simple but confronting. Are you living in truth? That's where everything begins. Not in the gym, not in the office, not on the stage, not online, but in front of that silent witness. You can fool almost everyone, but not yourself. And the moment you dare to face that truth without denial or drama is the moment change becomes possible. Because you cannot fix what you refuse to face. You cannot evolve while running from your own reflection. The Stoics understood this. They believed that clarity begins with honest self-inquiry, not judgment, no shame, but stillness. And from that stillness comes power, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstances, the kind that lasts. When your life feels out of balance, when your mind is restless, when you feel disconnected from yourself, the answer isn't outside. It's never been. It lives in that mirror, waiting. But most people glance and move on. They see the surface and avoid the weight beneath it, because it's uncomfortable. It's humbling, but it's necessary. You can't build self-discipline without self-awareness. You can't strengthen your core without knowing where the cracks are. And the mirror reveals all of it, not to shame you, but to guide you. Each time you look and ask, am I being honest with myself? You create a space for courage, a space to let go of the story you've been selling and reconnect with the reality that sets you free. Because growth never begins with lies. It begins with acceptance. The kind of radical, grounded acceptance that doesn't deny the past, but also doesn't let it define the future. This is where Stoic clarity meets modern chaos. You slow down, you look in, and you tell the truth, even if no one else hears it. If you've been inconsistent, admit it. If you've been escaping, name it. If you've betrayed your values, own it. That moment of honesty is not weakness, it's the doorway to power. And the more you practice it, the sharper your vision becomes. You start to see where your energy leaks. You notice the little lies you tell to make yourself feel safe. You catch the distractions that have become habits. And you realize that peace doesn't come from pretending you're okay. Peace comes from confronting what isn't. This is where the real shift happens. Not in grand declarations, but in quiet mornings, in hard questions, in small choices. You begin to rebuild trust with yourself, not by promising to be perfect, but by refusing to be fake. That's the Stoic path. Not fame, not approval, but alignment. A life where your actions match your beliefs. A life where the man in the mirror isn't a stranger, but a companion. So how do you live like that? You make the mirror a ritual, not out of vanity, but as a tool of reflection. You wake up, you look at yourself, and you ask, am I doing what I said I'd do? If yes, keep going. If no, don't lie, adjust, forgive, refocus, try again. No drama, no self-pity, just quiet correction. Every day a little more clarity, every day a little more strength, until the person you see becomes the person you trust. This is the discipline of inner alignment. It's not loud, it's not glamorous, but it's real. And it will change how you move through life. You won't need applause because your validation will come from your own integrity. You won't chase escape because you won't be at war with yourself. You won't need to prove it because you'll already know. The mirror doesn't lie. And when you stop lying to yourself, you stop living for approval. You stop building on shaky ground. You stop chasing peace and start creating it. Not by becoming someone new, but by finally being who you are, without edits, without noise, without fear. So the next time you pass by a mirror, stop. Look, really look. Not at your hair, not at your flaws, not at your age. Look into your eyes. Ask the question that matters. Not what do they think of me, but do I respect the person I see? Because if you can answer that with a quiet yes, nothing else matters. If you can't, now is the time to change it. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. 5. Heal in private, grow in silence. Not every wound needs an audience. Not every battle must be broadcast. Some pain deserves privacy, not because you're hiding, but because healing needs stillness. The deepest growth rarely happens under lights and cameras. It happens in quiet rooms, behind closed doors, in moments that no one else sees or even understands. That kind of solitude is not a weakness. It is a shield. It is space. It is where broken parts are examined, sorted, and slowly, silently rebuilt. Imagine someone going through the end of a long relationship. They don't post quotes about strength. They don't flood their feed with new selfies, hoping to look untouched. Instead, they move to a smaller apartment. They rearrange the furniture. They pick up old books. They write long journal entries no one will read. They eat alone, walk alone, cry in the dark, and get back up. Not once for the crowd. Every action, every breath is for themselves. And in that silence, something powerful begins to shift. Not quickly, not dramatically, but deeply. That's growth. Not the one that shouts, "I'm fine," but the kind that whispers, "I'm healing." In a world that rewards noise, silence becomes rebellion. We're told to share every moment, to document every emotion, to perform recovery like a storyline. But real healing doesn't need a prescription. It doesn't need a timeline. It only needs space to breathe. That's where Stoic wisdom enters, not to suppress your feelings, but to protect your focus. Pouring energy into performing pain drains the strength you need to actually move through it. Stoicism doesn't tell you to be cold, it tells you to be grounded, to feel but not to be consumed, to hurt but not to let that hurt define your identity. It invites you to withdraw, not to escape but to recalibrate. You're not required to explain your suffering. You don't owe updates. You don't owe closure to those who caused the wound. The only responsibility you have is to get still long enough to reclaim your peace. That's why silence is sacred. It gives you room to hear yourself clearly, away from projections and pity. It lets you meet your grief without performance. It gives you the strength to feel without crumbling. And in that space, you don't have to apologize for breaking. You don't need to translate your sadness into digestible captions. You just need to stay present, even when the pain feels unbearable. Pain doesn't always need to be processed out loud. Sometimes it needs to be witnessed internally, not to be buried, but to be faced without filters. You begin to realize that not all healing looks beautiful. Sometimes it's messy. Some mornings feel empty. But those are not setbacks. They are signals. Your soul is rearranging itself. Your identity is releasing what no longer serves. And if you stay long enough in that quiet, something new begins to emerge. A new boundary, a new belief, a new standard for what you will and will not allow. This is why your greatest breakthroughs won't come through applause. They will come through repetition, through daily, unseen choices, through picking yourself back up when no one is watching. That's when self-discipline becomes self-respect. That's when your energy stops leaking into proving and starts being redirected into becoming. It's when you stop needing to be understood and start needing to be whole. It might be tempting to announce your healing, to show them how well you're doing, but ask yourself, who are you trying to prove it to? If the answer is anyone but yourself, pause. Ask again. Because when you truly grow, you no longer seek revenge through transformation. You don't change to be noticed. You change because you've outgrown who you were, and that quiet evolution speaks louder than anything you could post. The Stoics practiced this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote in solitude. Epictetus found power in restraint. Seneca retreated into writing not because he feared the world, but because he needed to sharpen himself for it. The silence wasn't an escape, it was preparation. And that's the model we need today, not as an escape from feeling, but as an intentional retreat for alignment. So, when life breaks something inside you, don't rush to repair the image. Don't reach for the spotlight, reach for the truth. Retreat into stillness, not to disappear, but to remember who you are without the noise. Sit with your thoughts, let your emotions flow. Give yourself room to grieve, process, and reframe. And when you rise again, and you will, it won't be for applause. It will be for clarity, for strength, for you. Not all pain needs to be public. Not every step must be shared. The greatest transformations happen in silence. And when you heal there, you don't just survive. You emerge differently, stronger, quieter, clearer. And the next time someone tries to pull you back into chaos, you'll smile, not because it didn't hurt, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself who needed to be seen to feel strong. Let the silence shape you. Let the solitude sharpen you. Let your results speak when you're ready. Because real healing doesn't need noise, it needs depth. 6. Comparison kills progress. The surest way to lose momentum is to measure your steps against someone else's pace. The moment you start scanning the lanes beside you, you lose focus on the one that actually matters, your own. Comparison isn't motivation, it's poison. It robs you of clarity, distorts your timing, and convinces you that progress isn't real unless it looks like someone else's success. But your path isn't supposed to look like theirs. Your journey doesn't run on their calendar, and your growth is not less valid just because it's unfolding in silence. Let me tell you a short story. Two people plant seeds in separate fields. One field gets sun early, the other stays shaded longer. Weeks pass. The first field is already sprouting. The second seems quiet still. From the outside, it looks like one is thriving and the other is failing. But beneath the soil, the roots of the shaded field are deepening, fortifying, and expanding. It's not behind, it's preparing. And when it blooms stronger, more anchored. Growth, after all, doesn't always announce itself, but it never happens without purpose. That's exactly how progress works. It's internal before it's visible. And when you compare your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20, you ignore the pages they've already turned. Worse, you forget that your own chapter has a plot worth living. You stop watering your own field because someone else's looks greener. But that's the trap. The minute you abandon your pace for theirs, you lose alignment. Without alignment, discipline falls apart. Direction fades. You begin chasing timelines instead of truth. The Stoics warned us about this mental drift. They taught that the only thing worth controlling is yourself, your habits, your responses, your thoughts. Everything else, including other people's progress, belongs to fortune. When you envy, you hand your emotions to circumstances you cannot command. When you obsess over how far others have gone, you forget how far you've come. And when you live by their scoreboard, you lose the joy of your own game. The comparison also breeds restlessness. You could be doing meaningful, life-altering work, building your mental strength, rebuilding your discipline, learning stillness. But if it's not shiny or shareable, you start doubting it. And that doubt eats away at your focus. You jump ship, you chase shortcuts, you inflate your output to match someone else's image. And in the end, you feel burnt out, not because you failed, but because you abandoned your process. Here's the truth. Stoicism wants you to remember, nothing real can be rushed. Peace is not performance. Strength is not speed. Your discipline is your own, measured not by public milestones, but by how you rise when no one's clapping. And sometimes, growth means stepping back from the noise. Sometimes it means turning off the feed, silencing the updates, and returning to what actually moves you forward. That might look boring to others. It might feel invisible. But that's the nature of true transformation. It often happens in the dark, in repetition, in silence. Your job isn't to match them. Your job is to become the version of yourself that you respect when you're alone. And you can't do that while staring over the fence. So the next time you feel the urge to compare, pause. Ask yourself, is this helping me focus or distracting me from what matters? Does this spark clarity or confusion? Am I building myself or chasing shadows? These aren't questions of emotion, they're questions of direction. Because your progress, no matter how slow, is still progress if it's aligned with your values. You were not meant to be a replica. You were not built for their blueprint. You were meant to walk, step by step, through the exact terrain you've been given. Not to impress, not to compete, but to master. Your time will come, not when others say you're ready, but when your inner structure is strong enough to carry the weight of what you're becoming. Until then, your job is simple. Tend your ground. Do the work. Stay in your lane. And remember, comparison isn't just the thief of joy. It's the enemy of focus. There's freedom in reclaiming your attention. There's peace in honoring your own pace. There's quiet power in staying the course while others sprint past. And in the end, the depth of your roots will matter more than the speed of your rise. So stop looking around, start looking within. That's where real growth lives, and that's the only race worth running. 7. Self-respect is built in the quiet moments. Self-respect isn't built in stages. It's not measured in compliments, and it's never found in public applause. It's carved in silence, slowly, patiently, and without witness. It begins when you choose to do the right thing, even when no one's watching. When you hold the line you drew for yourself, not because someone else will notice, but because you will. Because the person you become in the quiet is the person you'll carry with you everywhere else. You don't become someone you admire by accident. You become that person by refusing to betray yourself in the little moments that seem to go unnoticed. When you say no to what tempts your weakness, when you say yes to what strengthens your mind. When you make the difficult choice, not because it's impressive, but because it's aligned. That's where dignity lives. Not in grand gestures, but in the subtle inner discipline of keeping promises no one else heard you make. The Stoics knew this deeply. They taught that character is revealed not in noise, but in restraint. Not in what you show, but in what you refuse. You don't owe anyone a display of virtue. You owe yourself the integrity of consistency. And that consistency is born in the moments you could have cut corners and didn't. The moments you could have justified slacking but didn't. The moments you could have surrendered to comfort but chose clarity instead. When you're alone, there's no audience. No pressure, just you and your own standard. That's where it either holds or collapses. And when you hold it, when you become the kind of person who respects their word to themselves, you start to feel something powerful. Not pride, not ego, but stability. You stop chasing identity. You start living it. Quietly, firmly, daily. It's tempting to think self-respect is a mindset, but it's a habit, a result. The byproduct of small, disciplined actions, repeated when they're the hardest to choose. It grows each time you set a boundary and hold it, each time you finish what you start, each time you make peace with a decision because it came from your values, not your feelings. It's not about being perfect, it's about being accountable, not to the world, to your own conscience. That's why the quiet matters. Because in those quiet moments, no one is watching and no one is clapping. But your future is listening. Your future is being shaped by every decision you make when it would be easier to let it slide. And that's where real self-respect begins. Not when others see your strength, but when you refuse to surrender it, even in secret. You start to build a foundation inside that doesn't shake when things go wrong. Because your stability doesn't come from circumstance, it comes from character. You don't need to prove you're disciplined when you know you've practiced it in silence. You don't need to chase respect when you've earned your own. You don't need to fight for validation when you're already grounded in who you are. Every small act of discipline becomes a brick. Every quiet decision becomes mortar. And without even realizing it, you begin constructing a core so solid that no external chaos can shake it. It doesn't make you untouchable. It makes you unwavering. You'll still feel fear, you'll still stumble, but you'll stand back up faster because your foundation isn't built on how others see you. It's built on how you treat yourself when no one else is around. There will be nights you're tempted to cut corners, days when giving up feels reasonable. But those are the defining moments. Not because someone's keeping score, but because you are. Your soul doesn't forget the times you showed up when it was hardest. Your spirit remembers every time you refused to abandon yourself, even when it would have been easy. And that memory becomes strength. That consistency becomes peace. That silence becomes a mirror. You stop flinching when people test your values. You stop bending to the pressure that used to crush you, because you've already proven to yourself time and again who you are, and no one can take that from you. So the next time you wonder where confidence comes from, where stability comes from, where clarity lives, it's here, in the quiet, in the discipline, in the sacred space where no one else sees what you choose, but you choose it anyway. Self-respect is not about telling the world who you are. It's about becoming someone you don't have to explain. That's the kind of strength you carry without noise, the kind no one can fake, the kind no one can give or take, and it's built one silent moment at a time. 8. You are the author of your story. No one else is holding the pen. No matter how heavy your past, no matter how flawed the last chapter, the next page belongs to you. And that's not just poetic. It's power, because it means you are not bound by the things that happened to you. You are not stuck with the version of yourself that faltered, failed, or gave up. The past is ink, but your hand is still steady. The question is, will you write, or will you wait for someone else to write it for you? So many people live their lives in reruns. They replay the same excuses, the same patterns, the same fears, as if life was a script they didn't write. They carry their mistakes like shackles instead of using them as reference points for change. But you are not sentenced to repetition. You are invited to rewrite. And the rewriting doesn't need to be loud or perfect. It just needs to be deliberate. One clear choice at a time. One shift in direction. One refuses to be the person who waits for change instead of becoming it. Stoic philosophy reminds us that while we don't control what has been written, we control the next word. That's all power ever is, the ability to respond with clarity. You can't undo the storm, but you can decide how to rebuild. You can't erase the wound, but you can choose how to heal. You are not just the reader of your life, you are the author, the editor, the one who decides where this goes next. It starts with the small things. When you break a cycle without announcing it. When you change your habits even though the past version of you clings for comfort. When you speak to yourself with dignity, not because everything is fixed, but because you've decided to stop living like it's broken. That's authorship, that's ownership, and it's done in silence, in solitude, in those invisible decisions that seem insignificant, but shape your reality over time. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment to begin again. You don't need a breakthrough or a blessing or permission. You only need to decide that this chapter won't look like the last. And that's enough. Because the moment you do, everything shifts. Not overnight, but inevitably. You become the person who acts, not reacts, who leads, not follows, who builds, not begs. That shift may not be visible to others, but you will feel it in how you walk, how you speak, how you think. This is why you can't let your past become your identity. What you've done is not who you are. It's what you've experienced, what you've survived, what you've outgrown. Your identity is what you choose to become in spite of that. And when you take responsibility for that choice, not guilt, not shame, but responsibility, you unlock something sacred: freedom. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from repetition, from helplessness, from being defined by things you never had control over in the first place. You may have inherited pain, trauma, dysfunction, or failure, but what you do with it, that's yours. That's where your authorship begins. And that's what the Stoics call not theoretical, not academic, practical, applied, real. It's when you choose discipline over delay, stillness over chaos, forward over familiar. That's what rewrites your story. Not motivational quotes, not external success, but internal alignment. So the question is, what kind of story do you want to live? One of cycles and regrets, or one of clarity and courage? It won't always be easy. You'll want to revert. You'll hear the voice of your old self telling you it's too late, that you're not ready, that it won't work. But that voice has no power unless you believe it. You can acknowledge it and keep writing anyway. Every action you take is a sentence. Every habit is a paragraph. Every belief you hold becomes the tone of your next page. If the story feels small, it's not because that's who you are. It's because that's what you've accepted. But the page is blank now. What you write next is up to you. And that choice is made in the quiet moments. In the morning when you get up, in the evening when you reflect, in the hour of discomfort when you refuse to retreat. You don't need to tell the world you're changing. Just change. Let the story tell itself. Let the results speak. Let your energy shift. Because when you reclaim the pen, you reclaim your direction. And no setback, no betrayal, no memory can take that from you. It doesn't matter how the story started. What matters is that it's still being written, and the next line is yours. Make it count. Everything we've explored today returns to one powerful truth. You are not a spectator in your life. You are the center of it. Every morning you rise, you are presented with a choice. Follow the noise or follow your nature. And the Stoic path always points you back to yourself. It tells you to train your focus, guard your discipline, and build mental strength through action, not applause. You don't need to shout your healing to the world. You don't need anyone to validate your growth, because the strongest progress is made in silence, in those unseen moments when you choose to rise instead of retreat, to act instead of react, to stay true to your core when everything around you tempts you to stray. That's how you build inner peace. That's how you earn your own respect. Let these principles become daily habits. Begin your mornings with reflection. Practice self-discipline in small decisions. Protect your mind from comparison. Reclaim your energy from distractions. Stay grounded in who you are, not who the world tells you to be. Over time, these quiet repetitions become an unshakable core. Not loud, not dramatic, but powerful. And remember, you are not your past, you are the one rewriting it. Your mind is your most powerful tool. Train it, respect it, lead it, because everything you're searching for, peace, clarity, direction, already lives within. You just need to return to it every single day. Now, I invite you to take this message and make it yours. Reflect, practice, evolve. If something in today's video resonated with you, share your journey in the comments below. Let others know they're not alone. We grow stronger, together, in silence, with focus, and through action. Your next chapter begins now. Write it with purpose,